I'm an indigenous artist. What I do is a lot of different things. The older I get, I don't do a lot of things, which I kind of like too, just to slow down a little bit and think about who I am and what is my place upon Mother Earth. There's a lot of native cultures that I've asked, and there's not even a word for art. It's not separate from the human condition. This is my wife, Penny. It's an honor to be her husband. She's one of the smartest people I've ever known, and she keeps me around because I make her laugh.
That's true. This is my husband, Michael Horse. He is hilarious. He kept asking me to marry him, and I kept saying no. And finally he said, I promise to make you laugh every day. And I went, that's a pretty good deal. So I grew up in California. And while I really felt blessed and lucky to have grown up in California, I also didn't feel like it was the place for us anymore. And then I started 3 times a day looking for where we were gonna live. And my criteria was water, looking at the UN climate reports and seeing what the projections were for different parts of the United States, and looking at mineral extraction sites, including fossil fuels. And we decided that this would be the place for us. So we bought this place sight unseen. And it has been so much more beautiful and fulfilling here than we'd ever imagined. It's like the best place either of us have ever lived. And we've both lived in these amazing places before we even met. And yeah, we just got really lucky, huh?
Yeah, Penny goes, well, we're moving to Minnesota. Both of us thought we'd retire in Mexico.
I had never been to the Midwest. I had absolutely no desire to.
Penny wouldn't go east of the Rockies.
I hated snow.
A snowflake fell on her when she screamed.
But when we were driving here, when we came over that hill in Duluth and saw the lake, my heart just started beating so fast. I had no idea how big it was in real life. And it was so beautiful. It took our breath away. And I had never imagined in my entire life that I would fall in love with the Midwest.
I'm so happy to be here. We're still amazed here. We go out every day and watching the changing of the seasons, and the people in Minnesota are the nicest people I've ever met. You hear about Minnesota, truly nice people. Everybody smiles at you, and you go in a hardware store and you go, got one of these, and the guy takes you over and finds it for you. I never knew my birth father. I'm part Swedish, so I'm getting into my Nordic roots. Look, Swedish meatballs, food of my people. And Penny goes, no, I don't think that's the.
That's not true. You made a delicious Swedish meatball and noodle dish a couple weeks ago. It was really good.
We went up to the powwow in Grand Marais, and on the way back, we went to the Finnish powwow, we called it.
It was cultural days, Finnish cultural days, and so.
And some Finnish food.
And I love snow now.
Yeah, she does. She loves snow. It's home to me now. I can't imagine living any other place. I'm part Yaqui, part Swedish. I grew up in what's called an intertribal culture in Los Angeles. I grew up with a lot of Dene Navajo people and Lakota people and Cheyenne people. And I was a traditional dancer when I was younger, and there were big powwows. And, it was a wonderful place to grow up. And, I wasn't really separated from my culture, and also got to learn about a lot of other native cultures. I got to hang out with some of the real traditional people that were from the Los Angeles area, some of the Gabrielino and Chumash people, and were friends of mine, and got to learn some about the history of California. All my family are artists. My mom's a traditional painter. My uncles are jewelers. My aunts are painters, and some of the really famous native jewelers took me in, and I got to apprentice with them. Never went to school with it, but it's my favorite thing to do. Of all the things I do, people say, what's your favorite thing to do? Cut rocks. Sometimes it'll come to me before time. Sometimes I'll just sit down. Sometimes the stone will dictate what I'm going to do. You know, my dad was most proud of all the things that I did. He was most proud of me doing the jewelry because I did that with my hands. It's a very organic process and good for my soul. Basically, I start with just a sheet of metal and a raw stone. The tools that I use that make the marks in my jewelry, they're my tools. They're all made from old pieces of drill rod or rebar or old files. So somebody wants to duplicate my work, they'd have to duplicate all my tools. To see people wear my jewelry, I mean, I'm flattered by it. I'm flattered by anybody that gets a piece of my art or, you know, watches one of my films. It's, you know, I mean, as a human, it's really nice for people to go, I really like that. You know, we used to paint on hides. That was our history book, our calendar. It would remind the oral storytellers. There were little pictures remind the oral storytellers of things that would happen, migrations, battles, things in the heavens. We could roll it up and take it with us. Well, on the reservation, we weren't allowed to have weapons or hunt, and so hides are not that available. We started getting a hold of pieces of scrap paper, mostly out of ledger books. But any piece of scrap paper, old love letters, Bibles, maps, we would draw on these things. And it was done, 1860s up to about 1940. A lot of it was done in Fort Marion, where, you know, after the Battle of Little Bighorn, they put everybody on trains and took them there. Very repressive time. So a lot of them are pictures of things that happened a long time ago or things that were actually repressing them, like being on the reservation. Also, social things. A lot of pictures of people cheating on their husbands and wives and spying on each other, you know, which is, you know, people, like kind of our soap opera. And there was just a handful of us that actually brought this art form back. Then now there's lots of people do wonderful, wonderful ledger artists, all kinds of, some of them they're really, really detailed artists. I mean, they can just draw like a photograph. And then there's other people that, there's this kind of almost cartoonish, but mine are very similar to the old ones because I copied them. I've had them in my hands, you know, I've had them in the museums in my hands. So I just started copying them, but it's a really interesting art form. I've learned so much about history doing this. Even people that know a lot about Native art have never seen ledger art. You know, the last 20 years or so, it's had a big renaissance. There's a lot of people that do it now, but people still, they haven't seen it because most of it was archived in museums. And there's a few books that have come out on it, but yeah, people are still discovering it. Wherever you repress people, this exists. It's in Manzanar, where they interned the Japanese. It's from the concentration camps. It's in there, and you know, wherever you do this to people, they get a hold of a piece of scrap paper and, you know, and they draw. You know, most of these were done in colored pencil, like what they called crayon back then, because that was the most accessible. But I paint like in the Comanche and Kiowa style, which is like pen and ink when it was available, and basically kids watercolor. Then I was running my art studio from an agent in 1980, and she says, "You want to be Tonto in the Lone Ranger?" You know. I went, "No, I'm an American Indian Movement member. I don't want to be Tonto." And we knew Jay. We loved him. I knew him. I knew his daughter. Even with that stereotypical role, he was the real deal. We just loved him. And I went, "No, I don't want to be Tonto." And she kept asking me. I went, "No." And she told me how much they were going to pay me. And I went, "Okimosabi." So I went down and talked to Mr. Fraker, and I said, "You going to do this different?" He went, "Yeah." And I did a couple of small things, but my first experience was this huge film. And not a very good film. It didn't take me long to realize it's only going to be as good as it's written. Working with David Lynch is one of the most amazing experiences of my whole entire life, and a true gift. I cherish every time we ever had together. He was a very funny man, too, and he would direct me, go, "Okay, Hawk, this time only good." I knew exactly what he meant. You know, he trusted us all very much, and same with him. I got to see him couple of months before he passed, and I live up here in wonderful Minnesota now, and he didn't want to talk about film. He goes, "What kind of trees do you have?" And I go, "I have this kind of pine and this kind of pine," and he was just fascinated by it. But the opportunity to work with that man, we knew we were doing something special the first time, but 25 years later to realize the impact that we made on film and television, I mean, everything's got Twin Peaks' DNA all over it. I mean, David had called me. I heard rumors it was coming back, and he called me and said, "Hey, buddy, we're getting the gang back together." And I said, "Well, wonderful. Just give me a cameo. I'll do it for nothing for you." He goes, "No, we got something for you." You don't get a chance to work, especially in television, to do art. And if I never worked again on anything, just to have that opportunity to work with David, people said, "Well, what's your big take from it?" I go, "Just to be a small dot of color on that man's artistic palette is enough for me." And he was everything you think he is and more. And as a native actor, a lot of this stuff is just so freaking stupid. And we had a chance to actually hold some mirrors up to some stereotypes. Just a wonderful experience. I'm a very lucky person. When I go out and I meet these fans, sometimes I don't do a lot of these events because I'm still working a lot. And I tell my wife it's not about fame. It's about sharing David's art. And they said, they say I'm a big fan. I go, I'm a fan just like you are. The thing that most impressed me about David, he did not compromise. I mean, they pushed and pushed and pushed on him. He would go, "Well, I'm not doing it." He would not compromise on his art. There's a great love for this character. A lot of times my wife will go, "Why aren't you as cool as the Hawk?" And when nobody's as cool as the Hawk. I base this character on a lot of these traditional elders that I grew up with that I hoped I would be someday when I got older. David understands the human condition. A lot of my native artist friends and contemporaries are big fans of David's work because, like us, he understands that the dream world is just as real as the awake world. And he understands that the forest is a living entity. It's a scientific fact that the forest communicates with each other, and the myceliums communicate with the forest, and the forest talks to the animal. Things that I think I should get and I don't get, and then things come out of the blue. Did a wonderful series about a nail salon in the mob called Claws with Niecy Nash, and I just did Motherland Fort Salem about these, my agent goes, "They want you to be on this thing about these witches and work with the government." I go, "That sounds stupid." And she goes, "No, you better look at it." Really wonderful character actors and actresses, and I've been given a lot of gifts. A friend of mine, I've done a couple of films for him. He wanted to do something. He says, I really want to do something of some great substance. And he says, "I know you do before you retire." And it's a story of 5 homeless people that meet on a bench every day. And they're pretty messed up. But there's a backstory to all of them, how they got that way. So when you see homeless people, don't look at them like they're invisible. It's a wonderful film. I'm really proud of it. I'm a real fan of animation. I wanted to do cartoon voices for years. So hard to get into. I speak a little bit of my language, so I started doing a couple of those, and then people would hire me. And I did do Captain Planet and Superman and Batman and Spirit, which was my favorite. The Mississippi River occupies a unique space in America's consciousness, especially in Minnesota. I have a real affinity for the Mississippi River, but I didn't know anything about the northern part of it. So I was asked to do it, and I'm so pleased and honored and so excited to see it because the water is so important. My wife is a big water activist, and without clean water, we're all going to be in a lot of trouble. Her story is as complicated as it is captivating, filled with heartbreak and triumph. And it begins here. Nature has an effect upon people. We're all connected to it. You can't be a healthy person without music and art and nature. But now, this is family to me. These trees and the ferns, that's all part of my family now. It's interesting, of all the tribal ceremonies I've seen all around the world, most of them deal with gratitude. It's thank you, and you're a grateful person, you're less apt to be a jerk.
I would like to invite people, which I do all the time anyway, invite people to start imagining and envisioning the beautiful future that humanity can create for the entire sacred system of life. Because everything that we see around us, everything that's human-made was first imagined. And we can imagine something much better than what we have right now.
Postcards is made possible by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota. Additional support provided by Margaret A. Cargill Philanthropies, Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien on behalf of Shalom Hill Farms, a retreat and conference center in a prairie setting near Windham, Minnesota. On the web at shalomhillfarm.org. A better future starts now. West Central Initiative empowers communities with resources, funding, and support for a thriving region. More at wcif.org.